Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good, guys?
As we are getting closer and closer to the start of the Premier League season, we are going to start our preseason coverage, beginning with Arsenal FC. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into it. Arsenal, just before we start our actual preview, let's look back at what happened last season. And Mac has noted here, of course, Arsenal finished at 84 points, second in the Premier League, set to return to the Champions League for the first time since the 2016-2017 season. Last season, Odegaard, Martinelli, and Saka tied for leading goal scorers in all competitions with 15 each. Oh, wow, that's 45 goals between them. And they did get knocked out of the EFL Cup in the semifinals, also in the third round of the FA Cup. But they did reach the last 16 of the Europa League. And so, quick, I guess, Mac, give us your rundown on how you felt their season went last year.
Last season, they definitely overshot projections and expectations in all scenarios. They had gone from the previous season, aiming from coming out of fifth place, just missing out barely on the Champions League, to then last season, that was their focus, just to return there to finish inside the top four. But they definitely took a step further in that and were the main title challengers for Man City down to the wire, and for most of the season actually led the Premier League. So a little disheartened to be able to miss out on that opportunity from an Arsenal fan's perspective. But up until then, you can argue is that they probably had the biggest jump out of anyone inside the top seven, aside from Newcastle, which we may eventually talk more about down the road. So this season, it puts them in a precarious position where it seems as if they took two steps forward last year, and it might be difficult to maintain that this year. So overall, last season, great success, but it definitely puts them under pressure to repeat that, if not exceed that, this season.
Great success for sure, definitely in the league. Gio, they did get knocked out of the EFL Cup in the semifinals, so quite a good run there. Third round of the FA Cup, and then last 16 of the Europa League. Do you think that's a decent achievement? Did they overperform, underperform in that, sort of coupled with how they did in the season? What do you think?
I think if I'm going to be brutally honest, obviously I think they're definitely ahead of schedule. But I think how they went out in each competition, I think they should feel a little bit disappointed, especially in the Europa League, losing to Sporting. I thought that was quite unfortunate. I don't think they played their best games there. And then EFL, I think they really could have challenged to even get one trophy under their belt. But I think, that wasn't the situation. I guess they were more focused on the league, but obviously we know what happened there. But again, I could be overly critical, but I think they could have definitely achieved a little bit more than they did. Not that what they achieved wasn't great. I think there were things left on the table.
Definitely, and moving forward, and we're going to touch on that. I think the expectation will be there with this young core that they have, and of course, now we're going to step straight into it. The off-season changes, and of course, finish second in the Premier League, push Man City to the end of that season, making it very difficult for them. And we knew, injuries were going to happen in that season. We kind of predicted there's going to be a little bit of a blip. Maybe at that time with what you said, Gio, with their match against Sporting or their tie against Sporting, they kind of lacked a little bit of depth there. Mac, they did bring in Kai Havertz from Chelsea for £75 million, Jurrien Timber from Ajax for £40 million, and of course, none other than Declan Rice from West Ham, 116 and odd million pounds as well. That's quite a big just spend in terms of just one transfer season. I'm not sure if there's still any more talks at this point. We can definitely talk about that a little bit more, but just initial thoughts, Mac. What are your thoughts on those transfers?
It's definitely a doubling down of like Edu, Arteta, their plan, their vision from the Kroenke family. We're spending another offseason again over £200 million. I think since Arteta's taken over, it's been over 600 million in the several seasons since he's kind of been in charge, where you see a full refresh of the squad. And it fits the characteristics of majority of his transfers. You're talking about kind of young, talented players under the age of 25, looking to be able to build around for the next 3, 4, 5 years potentially, and to get their best years in football. So with those transfer ins in conjunction with their contract signings of Saka, Saliba, and Reece Nelson, Saka and Saliba were big momentous moments for Arsenal because he locked them into another, I think, both respectively 5 and 4 year contract extensions, where you might on the conversation if Arsenal didn't perform so well over, let's say, this last season, and then going into the season, they could potentially have been on the exit looking for different positions. I know Ray used to joke around with me all the time about, hey, Mars leaves Man City, Saka's going to Man City right away. So obviously that's not going to happen. So that's always lovely to see. So you could have put the argument with this doubling down of this offseason with these contract extensions, everyone kind of, I'll say, buying into, as I said, the Arteta Edu plan. This might be one of Arsenal's most successful off seasons that they've had. Puts them under even more pressure because just from kind of a tactical landscape, when you look at the depth of the team, players they're able to bring in, they're as deep as ever, they're as good as ever, and there shouldn't be a reason why they can't progress, they can't go further. So I would argue, I would say of the top 6 teams, probably the best offseason or the most complete offseason, and we can definitely grade them because they at least have completed what they were looking to be able to do, it seems like. So overall, because we're not anticipating any more exits, there was talk where Partey may leave to go to the Saudi League and kind of join the wave, but it looks like that's been rebuffed because they haven't met the transfer kind of request of what Arsenal want for him. So it seems like they're done. And I definitely think that they added where they need to. And like I said, just puts pressure on them even more to continue to progress.
I think that's critical. Great point that you brought up. Of course, it looks like, Gio, now this is a statement from the club in terms of top down to bottom. Hey, we're investing it. Players that were brought in, not only will it help improve the squad, but of course, Declan Rice expected, of course, to just walk straight into the first starting lineup. Kai Havertz, likely one of those players that might feature a lot as well. Jurrien Timber, depth in terms of defense. What are your thoughts, and as well as those contract extensions, what are your thoughts on this statement by Arsenal so far, which, there's still some time to do some more business, but what do you think so far?
I think they definitely did great business. I think if we had to grade, again, like Max said, I think they definitely get an A here, simply because they addressed each weakness that they had throughout last season. They were crying out for an extra midfielder who can definitely create, and arguably, a box-to-box midfielder. And I think Declan Rice can provide that, especially in the Premier League. We've seen him provide. We've seen him, be that more backstop type player. We've seen him, be a great passer of the ball. And we've seen him score goals, although not many. But knowing that he's capable, defenders will have to respect that accordingly. So I think, yes, they absolutely nailed it on the transfer market. I think now it's just more so, the players that couldn't break through to, the first team, maybe sending them out on loan so they get more minutes. But, with that being said, I think Arsenal are the biggest target for, failure. But I guess we can talk about that a little later, as you can grade how they did as well.
I mean, I love the fact that all the business was done early, and you don't see that too often anymore. Apart from certain teams that really liked, especially like Bayern, when they announced that they're going to sign a player from Dortmund 6 months in advance, and you just know it's going to happen. I love the fact that Arsenal did get all of their business done early. You've seen all of those players that we just mentioned feature in some of their friendlies already, and that gives Arteta more time for them to mesh together, and that's great for them. That being said, let's move on now, I guess, to the transfers out that I guess Gio kind of alluded to. Some of those players might not be that might not get into the first team, might get loaned out and whatnot. But of course, we know now that Granit Xhaka did leave to Leverkusen for £15 million, and there are talks about some other players leaving as well. Palomari, Ainsley Maitland-Niles both, I believe, left the club as well. But apart from that, Mac, is there anyone specifically that you're looking at that may be leaving the club before the summer window shuts?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Again, I would love to see Jorginho just to be like out of contract. I think that would be fun and hilarious. But that's more selfish and just kind of a personal take there. It doesn't seem to be any expectation from a kind of a player on loan as well. It seems like the team is very much settled. My question more comes to, they have a lot of bodies, and that's something that we're going to talk about later. But the exit to Granit Xhaka, is probably as good of a turnaround from one couple seasons in, from originally him being the captain, kind of the situation that happened, I think it was at the Southampton game, him throwing the armband, etc., to then last year, kind of the impact that he's had, kind of the revelation that he was in that midfield role. It'll be interesting to see how Havertz then kind of fits into that. Again, something that we'll talk about later. But I don't anticipate any other exits or even loan moves. Maybe a loan move probably for Marquinhos for out on the wing. That's probably about it. I would be surprised if there's too much else. Again, other than, and this will be the last one, it will be the striker situation. I think that we'll talk about that a bit later between Nketiah and Balogun, where I don't think you can go into the season starting with both Nketiah and Balogun trying to fight and view themselves as first string strikers playing behind Gabriel Jesus. So there will have to be some sort of conversation there. One of them may be either shipped out for cash, shipped out for a loan. It'll be interesting to see. But other than that, I don't anticipate anything else from the main squad.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's for sure someone that we're going to talk about. And I think a lot of clubs should still keep an eye out for that situation there. I think, if I'm not making this up, I saw more recently a quote from Nketiah online said, I'm not settling for a spot. I'm here. I signed a contract to be part of the first team and fight for a spot. So that's great to hear from one of your players that they have that mentality. Of course, you want that to help in terms of competition for the club and make everyone better. One of the players that stands out to me is one of those players returning from loan, and that man goes by the name of Nicolas Pepe. One of my favorite players in terms of how everything turned out. But hey, I'm not sure. Do you guys think maybe he'll be staying? I haven't really seen anything in terms of him going out on loan or leaving the club this season. I believe he played for Nice last year on loan. 19 games, 6 goals in the league, and I believe they had also a couple of goals he had a couple of goals in the Conference League, but that may be a good backup for Saka. If he's not, if Saka needs a rest here and there, he's not definitely a player that's been with the club and can kind of produce. I'm not sure how you guys feel about it, but Gio, what are your thoughts about any outgoing players for Arsenal before the season transfer season is shut?
Arsenal are kind of difficult spot. Some may consider it no. They have a lot of good players. They need to send all these players out. But with that being said, a lot more competitions again this year. How hungry are they, and what do they want to achieve? Now, that will base kind of come down to how many players they decide to look for loan options, look to send out on loan. Because if they want to succeed and they want to consistently play at a high level, your typical starting 11 isn't going to play all those minutes. You're going to want depth. You're going to want as much depth as you possibly can. And there are competitions where these guys who are begging for minutes can shine. Now, if Arsenal are hungry and want to achieve a lot more this year and say we want trophies and we want as many trophies as we possibly can, then I don't see many players, leaving the club on loan. Whether it be Pepe, even, if they want that depth, they want to regain his confidence because they obviously saw potential in him to sign him for that amount back in the day. But I think it'll come down to what their goals are as a club, and that will determine who really goes out on loan or who doesn't go out on loan.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. If they really didn't rate Pepe and didn't see him as far in the future plans, then I think he would have gone permanently last season. Whereas, of course, he just went out on loan. He's now back, and hopefully, for his sake, he can make a claim there at the Arsenal team, or bring his stock up for future sale if that is the case in the future. But yeah, apart from that, we'll take a quick break here, guys, and then we'll be back with some more of our predictions for Arsenal's upcoming season. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to Hustle Footy, guys. We are going to continue our preview season for Arsenal, and of course, now we're going to discuss how they potentially could line up for the next season. And Mac, of course, take it away, please.
So stylistically, I don't think we're going to see much of a change from last year. I think a lot of other teams have tried to adopt a box midfield, which Arsenal very much, I wouldn't say Arteta was the pioneer for that because it's very much a carbon copy of what Pep Guardiola did, but they made the same evolution at the exact same season. So it's kind of interesting in that way where last season you saw a lot of times where their back four with Zinchenko playing on the left-hand side, he popped up into kind of a defensive midfield role in possession. And then that Xhaka left Shetler midfield position ended up getting more free space to either attack it up in the box, kind of rotate out wide as needed, and kind of be more of a free roam type of position. I would be surprised if there's any changes from that stylistic in possession of how they're going to be able to build up, how they're looking to be able to attack with 5 really attackers, 2 wingers, it seems like 2 10s, and a striker filling up every gap up top, and the 5 defenders if it would be more of a traditional left fullback or kind of the 2 double pivot if one of the defending wide backs does not tuck in. I think the interesting twist this year will be actually Jurrien Timber to see how well he does transition in his inaugural season with Arsenal, because for Ajax, as well as for Netherlands, he's played in a variety of positions ranging all across the back four and in defensive midfielder. So I wouldn't be surprised if some of the time, if let's say Ben White's injured or Zinchenko's injured, we see a restructuring where he starts in one of the fullback positions and he's the one that tucks in, because a lot of times when it wasn't Zinchenko, it was definitely an uncomfortable Kieran Tierney tucking in. That's not his natural position. That's not his favorite spot. So I think in possession, that'd be the biggest change, where there might be another player that's very, very comfortable in possession in the midfield out of defense. So I think that'll be their biggest difference. The only other question that I guess maybe when I toss to Gio, I'll see what you think, is that how well can actually Kai Havertz adapt to that Xhaka role, because this is something that he has not played in the Premier League and I'd argue through his entire career. So this is definitely something new. And there's been a lot of jokes on Twitter or from Chelsea kind of YouTubers talking about his adjustment, because they don't see him as a Shetler midfielder. That's not his position. He's played as a striker. He's played as a 10. So it'll be very interesting to see the off the ball work rate to see if he can be in that position. I think he does bring something very interesting to Arsenal, but how successful it'll be, I guess we'll wait and see. But again, from how they'll play, I don't think we'll see much difference. And for them to continue to have a good season, just as Ray, you highlighted jumping in the beginning of the podcast with Odegaard, Saka, and Martinelli, they'll just have to be just as important this year. They need the same, if not better again, to see any sort of improvement, for sure.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I don't think there's a question about Saka, Martinelli, and Odegaard in terms of what they need to bring and what they should bring to this Arsenal team next season. But I guess, yeah, let's dive straight into that, Gio. I just looked up their last couple of friendlies, and it appears that Havertz has started in that left center mid spot. I guess, Gio, to put you in the hot seat, do you think he has what it takes, or do you think maybe like Arteta has a different plan for how he approaches this position next season? Because technically there's not as much cover for Tierney or Zinchenko or even Timber with Xhaka leaving, and I don't expect Havertz to do that as much. What do you think?
Now, here's what I think. I have briefly talked about in past podcasts. I don't know if I said it in a podcast or I said it to you guys, that if Kai Havertz could potentially flourish if he dropped back a little more, dropped back in a deeper role. Now, I think he has, the aggressive nature to do so, but I think he'll flourish against weaker teams when Arsenal have the ball. But again, Mac brought up a very good point in terms of his work rate off the ball. It might be tough for him to chase the entire game or chase the ball or follow where the ball is going the entire game, because he's so used to pushing upwards as opposed to falling backwards and trying to win that ball back. I think I think early on he will struggle. He will flourish against the weaker teams, especially if Arsenal are able to keep possession, like how Man City is able to keep possession and kind of move the ball around the pitch, however they please. But when it comes down to it, it'll take time. But will I think do I think he'll be successful in that role? I think very much so. But it will come down to how quickly he can adapt to it, and more so because he is used to playing that more offensive role. How comfortable he is with, say, how else can I fill the stat sheet with other things opposed, that aren't goals. So I think he has the potential to do it. I've said it before, and I stand by that comment. That he's able to drop deeper and be a very very critical player. So hopefully what I said is true. I can see it happening for sure.
I absolutely love to hear it. Gio is a big stan of my boy Kai Havertz. Hey, I'm hoping the best for him as well. I think it's going to take a lot of time for him to settle. And Arsenal fans, hear it from us first. Please don't expect that output straight from the start of the season. It's going to take some time. And like Gio said, there's going to be a lot more different things that he'll offer, I think, than just goals and assists in that team. So, hey, we'll see what happens with him. Of course, big price tag considering what he came to Chelsea for and how he did last season. But all eyes will be on that. Another player that will have some eyes on, especially from those faithful Arsenal fans, Mac, is Emil Smith Rowe. What do you expect from him this season?
It's very interesting because I don't see how he breaks into the starting 11 unless there is an injury to Kai Havertz, because a lot of the talk going towards the end of last season is that he would be the heir apparent to that Xhaka position playing in midfield, that he was adjusting to that role and spending really majority of last season trying to be able to get used to it and training, be able to make sure that he can fulfill that position, because that winger position on the left-hand side is settled with Martinelli. So for him to have consistent minutes, that pathway was open in that midfield position. So is that, I guess, I don't know necessarily think it's a sign of faith to then go ahead and spend £75 million on a player to be able to bring in to play ahead of you. So is that kind of a sign of lack of confidence in him? I think that'll be interesting. But given the amount of competitions they are in, he's definitely going to have the opportunity to play. Where he does, I think that's probably where he would most naturally fit, other than potentially being a serviceable winger out wide. But then again, there's a lot of depth there between Martinelli, Trossard, Saka, Reece Nelson, who signed a new contract as well, expecting to get minutes. So I think that he has too many barriers of entry to potentially, I would say, be a consistent starter, a consistent player. But he's going to have to, unfortunately, be in a position where he is just a rotation player, just given the amount of depth Arsenal does have across the top of the pitch. And those are the positions he's trying to fit in.
Yeah, it's tough. You don't really expect, if he was maybe 2 years younger, you'd maybe expect him to go out on loan. But considering the fact that he's now, a name you associate definitely with, that first team with Arsenal, it'll be weird if he does go out on loan. And like you said, bringing in Havertz and sort of him theoretically taking his spot, that just makes it a little bit more difficult for him. But of course, competition will only help the squad. And that being said, competition is what Balogun will be having with Gabriel Jesus and Eddie Nketiah. Gio, what are your thoughts about those three? How will Arteta, or how should he approach it? What are your thoughts?
Very friendly competition, and I think that almost gives each player an edge to kind of work harder and forced to produce on the field. Look, I think to go about it the right way, I think each of them, whenever they do get minutes, I think it's not always goals. I think it's how you contribute to the team. Whether I know you're a striker, you're playing up front, you're playing the front three, whatever the case may be. The idea is to score goals, to create chances. But sometimes when a striker is in a rut, they kind of look and just to shoot as quickly as possible. But how can they contribute whether it comes from an assist or tracking back to make a tackle. It's those little things that's going to earn them the extra minutes, and especially because they are again in higher competition, say for the Champions League and things of that nature. League Cups. Those are those key moments where they're going to continue to earn minutes, and I don't think they need to take. I don't think they can take any minute they get on the pitch lightly. Every minute is to compete and to prove that whether or without Gab, we can be slotted in just as well and produce just as much as he can, if not more.
Yeah. I mean, it's weird now because Balogun could have chosen different nationality, but now he's chosen to represent the U.S. Mac shaking your head there, but that would have been interesting because if he, of course, there's an eye out for the Euros for next season, and if he did choose perhaps England, then he would have been sort of in competition to do that and get a stake his claim for the England squad, but now no longer needs that. So I don't know. What do you think, man?
So I think there is a definitive situation that has to be kind of finished off here. We can't go into this beginning of the season with both of them on the team, in my opinion. So that gives us a couple of options where you're either selling Nketiah to be able to bring Balogun in to be able to fight with a number one spot for Gabriel Jesus, because I think we can all agree Gabriel Jesus is staying. He's going to be the starting striker at the beginning of the season. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, but he does need competition. So it's either you're bringing in Balogun to then sell Nketiah, vice versa. You're selling Balogun because you're stating that Nketiah will be the backup striker. The last option being is you loan out Balogun once again. He has 2 years remaining on his contract. So if you loan him out for another full season, he's coming back as a lame duck, where he has 1 year left on his contract, potentially be able to sign a pre-contract with a different team short-term time afterwards. So if he ends up performing very, very well, demanding a huge wage bill, not happy with Arsenal, it's going to be more difficult to be able to kind of secure a higher transfer fee. So I think that Arteta and Edu have to be able to figure out, okay, who's our long-term plan for the striker position? Because a lot of what Nketiah and Balogun offer, to me, are very similar. They're great goal threats in behind, great finishes inside the box. They don't do much out wide. The difference would be is that there was some aspect of Balogun last year having capacity to be able to drop deep and create for others, whereas Nketiah doesn't really have that in his locker. So do you more value the potential growth you're going to get from Balogun, or the devil with Nketiah, who did perform well in small stints last year as Gabriel Jesus was hurt? So I think that's the question. It definitely has to be answered going to the season, because otherwise you're just going to have kind of, in my opinion, a upset or foul stench in the locker room, and you want everyone to be pulling on the same rope in the same direction. And if you have one person that's kind of the poison apple out of the whole crate, it could potentially ruin everything else. So you definitely want to have that sorted going into the season, which is why I think it's been great that through the preseason, they've all played. In fact, Jesus, Nketiah, and Balogun at one point started up playing as a front three together, which I thought was, again, something we'll never see in the regular season, right? So it'll be very interesting to see what the final decision is. My personal opinion, and I know this won't surprise either of you, I would throw Nketiah to the side of the road he could be on the Saudi train, part of the Henderson deal if need be, whatever we need to do. I'll be honest, that's where I would go. Again, but I'm still not happy Balogun chose the Americans. That's never a great sign, but it is what it is. He's definitely a young striker with quality, so hopefully he can flourish, and I would definitely prefer to see that happen in Arsenal versus see him flourish at a different club.
I completely agree. That situation needs to get sorted out. And even I actually come from it at a different angle. I do want one of them to be gone permanently. And actually, it might surprise Mac. I think it could be Balogun. He could bring in a big fee, and then you can reinvest in an extra midfielder. Of course, you now have a lot of midfielders in the team, but Havertz, given the fact that he has played in a attacking sort of false nine role, he will, I think, start predominantly in midfield, but he could also provide that depth there. And if you have Saka, Martinelli on form like they did last season, Gabriel Jesus at times was just more so a link-up player and doing all the dirty work so that Martinelli and Saka could get up there. I could see Havertz doing that, and his profile being sort of a longer body, taller player, hold-up play could also be worked in that situation. Then you can, of course, invest in another midfielder. But just a thought there in terms of what they possibly could do. Of course, we'll have to wait and see. But I guess moving on to this next segment, Gio, key players / potential disappointments. And now you get to choose, regardless of which category you choose one player and give us sort of who you'll be looking out for to either be great for Arsenal this season or be a huge disappointment for their team. So give us your thoughts.
It's the man of the hour. It's your boy. It's none other than Kai Havertz, right? As much as as high as the ceiling could be for him, we do ask, the fans give him time and things of that nature. But we've seen Kai Havertz in a slump, where he doesn't score the goals you'd expect sort of a false nine to be able to put away or things of that nature. I think definitely Kai Havertz, because it's so important that he, integrates himself into this team, because we just don't know what ESR has left in him right now, in terms of coming back from injury, not playing a whole lot of games, not playing a whole lot of minutes, and even preseason, not playing a whole lot of minutes as well. So I think in order for Arsenal to be successful, I think this starting 11, this potential starting 11 rather, need to plant themselves as a threat, and it's all going to start in that midfield. Obviously we're expecting Odegaard to have another great season as he did last season. He kind of tapered off a little nearing the end, but that doesn't take away from the season he's had. Still think it was a fantastic season for him. And then obviously Rice being so acquainted with the league already, I think it'll be a quite seamless transition, seeing him on the pitch in the preseason. So I still think it's Kai Havertz. If his season starts anything like the All-Star Skill Challenge that he was a part of, it's looking dangerous for Arsenal, and not in a good way. So God bless. It is Kai Havertz. The good and the bad definitely starts from Kai Havertz.
Okay, that's a great shout. I mean, pretty straightforward. One player that will have all eyes on him, regardless of which team you support. I think, based off sort of how last season ended. I guess I would like to go next, and I'm surprised that Gio. I think if it wasn't for Kai Havertz, Gio, you might have picked this player definitely at the end of last season, and that's of course our boy Gabriel. He makes the partnership with Saliba in that back two for Arsenal, and he did have a great in terms of output for the team. He had a couple of goals. He did play most games, if I can recall. He couldn't have really missed a whole lot and was ever constant for them. However, there were some times where he was sort of looked at for some mistakes, maybe could improve in certain areas, especially in now a season where they pushed City all the way to the end. Those mistakes are going to be critical, and the better he can do in terms of making fewer mistakes throughout the season, the higher the chance that, of course, Arsenal will have to finish not just in the top four, potentially challenge for the title, and then even in the cup runs that they're involved in to do well. So I think he's going to have to improve and step up, not in terms of just his quality of play, just mistakes and keeping everything simple, because Saliba will, based on what he produced last season, we know what to expect from him. I think it's just Gabriel to sort of step into that level and hopefully keep things tidy for Arsenal in the back. So that's my player that I'll be looking at. What about you, Mac?
It has to be the most expensive British player of all time, Declan Rice. I think that we have to go positive here. I know Ray is going to be very disappointed by this selection, where I think it's going to be a seamless fit. I think he's going to walk through the door, boss the midfield, arguably be coming into an Arsenal team, show a lot of play that he has not been able to do through the preseason. There's been a couple of interviews where he's come out and talked about Arteta, talked about how much he's learned about the transition, where he's being asked to do things that he's never had the opportunity to do, but he's excited to be able to take that challenge. The leadership skills that he brings in a midfield, which a lot of people would argue has lacked kind of leadership, character, or drive. I think he answers all those questions, is what he showed with West Ham over the last couple of years. So I think he walks the door, and is a shoo-in to be one of the best midfielders in the Premier League, arguably the best defensive midfielder in the Premier League. He's going to be in that conversation if he just carries over his plays and has the opportunity to show what he can do going forward in possession. As Partey, towards the end of last season, kind of tapered off, Declan Rice can step in and kind of boss that position, be the number one choice. And I think it warrants kind of the character that he has, where there was talk amongst kind of fans online, where does he walk in and automatically take the armband off of Martin Odegaard? Obviously, I don't think it would happen, but that just shows the quality of character that he does have. So the only question would be is, at the same time, how much ass wiping does he have to do to cover his Kai Havertz situation? Is that if that doesn't go well, if the work rate isn't there from his partnership, is he capable of filling two people at once? And the talk is, of course, their best defensive midfielder since they've had Patrick Vieira, which has really been their long time dream to find a replacement for that type of role. So it'll be interesting to see if Declan Rice can fill those boots. But without a doubt, in my opinion, he's the closest to that would be able to have been able to do that since the Invincibles, and walks through the door as, I would argue, Arsenal's best midfielder. So I think he's going to have a great season, and he's going to prove a lot of doubters wrong. Because we even did the podcast at one point, we're talking about the most expensive transfers in the world, and it really is a flip of the coin. How much money you put into them, it doesn't always work out. For me, maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid here, but I think this is going to work out extremely well.
Oh, I know. Sometimes it doesn't work out, brother. I know.
As a Man U fan,
I know. You don't have to rub it in. I'm sitting right here. I didn't
say anything. I didn't bring up the P word. I didn't do that.
Hey, I love the shout though. I didn't pick him because I think he would just fit in so seamlessly. But there are talks about him. If Havertz doesn't play as well as we expect him to do, especially early on in the season, you have Partey who's started in that holding position by himself. Why not Rice next to him? And if there's talks about he can Rice can do all of the covering. Can he elevate his game to provide more of that offensive threat as well in that Havertz position or Xhaka position from last season? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. That's the reason why I didn't pick him. But of course, one of the most expensive transfers in the world now. A lot of eyes will be on that player as well. But let's wrap it up here, guys. We talked about, of course, a lot of transfers in, transfers out, how they possibly line up. Now, time to give our sort of final prediction, but not really locked in yet. Gio, what does a good season look like for Arsenal in the upcoming 2023-2024 season?
A good season is obviously in the top four, but I think they obviously have higher hopes based on the new additions. If, just looking at what they accomplished last season and what they added in terms of how they can improve the team, I think they've improved in every, category, defensive midfield up front. Then, yeah, I think they should be looking no further than another top two finish, if not challenging for the title. I think, again, they do have the depth now. They have a little bit more depth. And I think they have an identity of how they want to play. Although it's going to be challenging because teams almost know how they want to play. But I think, the quality outbeats, the other team's strategy even. So I think with the addition of Declan, of course, and definitely based on, the productivity of Kai, I don't think they should look any further than at least the top two finish, really.
Ooh. Big claims, Gio. I'm very similar. I'm on a similar boat. I think top three is the expected. They should expect to finish in the top three. Anything in the top three, I think it's a good season. Anything below that is considered not satisfactory. And of course, I think it's more so based on how well they did last season. They should continue to finish in the top four this season, especially with their improvement. In the Champions League, though, I think that will be a big marker for how far they've come. Of course, first time back in the Champions League for almost 6 years, and it looks like they will be with the additions that they have made to this team, I think Arteta will like to, it's a long-term plan. He would like to not just treat it as, we're finally back, let's just see how we can do. He, I think, should set that expected level of competition in that squad that, hey, we should make it out of our respective group. Of course, depending on situation, sometimes you get matched with some of your top European teams, but realistically, Arsenal should make it out of their group, and then in the knockout stages, make it past the first round, and I think that would suffice for a pretty good season. And then, of course, your cup competitions go as far as you can. I don't think they'll be too harshly judged on that, but yeah, top 3 and then knockout stages of the Champions League. I think that's what can be considered a good season for Arsenal. What do you think, Matt?
I'm on the same page with you, Ray, in terms of where cup competition-wise, where they should finish. I'm definitely on the same page with you in terms of having a top 2 finish. And for me, would be kind of their hope, their goal, expectations in the top 3 would be great. I think this is going to be a very hard team to judge if they finish in the top 3, because I think the sign of growth isn't necessarily maybe points on the board, position in the league. If they finish in the top 3, it's more of like an ethereal feeling, is where have they closed the gap with Man City, where a lot of times through last year we talked about, it's Man City, it's done, it's over, blah, blah, blah. Even though Man City were still behind, we always looked at them as that was the better team. That was a team, game on the line between those 2 teams. In all likelihood, they're going to be able to win, and they're going to come in as heavy favorites. I think what shows us a sign of progression is the talk around them, is the feeling around them. We're like, actually, no, they're similar to Liverpool previously, where that's actually a coin toss. We don't know what could happen in the game, that they are competitive. I think it's less so position in the table if they stay within that top 3. I think what can count as success is that our fans are going to actually have that belief where, they're going to be able to finish. And the kind of, even the non-Arsenal fan watching that game from a kind of a third-party perspective, from a bird's eye view, is that, yes, this is just as competitive a team. I think that more so than finishing above Man City will show a sign of progression, as well as Man City themselves, and something we'll go into later. They're in a transitional period as well. So if Man City take a step back, Arsenal take a step forward, are they now in that conversation? I think that's more so what they need to look at. It's tougher to judge. It's more kind of, like I said, an ethereal feeling that we'll have. But for me, that's the sign of progression. Are they now pegged into that conversation? Yes, they're at the top of the Premier League. It wasn't just no one else was there. They finished there.
Yeah, no, that's a great shout, because a lot of games last season still going into, and the big game that comes up to my head is the Arsenal-Liverpool game, where even though Arsenal had a great season, you still couldn't really call which way it would go, especially because of the season Liverpool had. But going into this season, Arsenal fans or non-Arsenal fans should look at this like, Arsenal should be looked at favorites for, those top 6 matchups between themselves and your Cities, your Uniteds, your Liverpool, Newcastle even now. And so that's going to be, I think, a big tell if that sort of feeling around all fan bases looks at Arsenal as one of those favorites going in, especially against City, the team that they rivaled last season all the way to the end. So yeah, very, very exciting to see, and we'll definitely be covering that a little bit more in detail as we get closer to the start of the season. But let's conclude here for this podcast. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @house_of_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be tomorrow, continuing our pre-season preview of Chelsea Football Club. So on that note, thank you, Mac.
What do you think of Tottenham? Nah, I'm just kidding. Go guys.
Shit. What? Who said that? Who said that?
Thank you, Gio.
Take care, guys.
See you guys soon.